Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to greet all the participants of the Krasnoyarsk conference and to say once again that I'm still feeling a member of your network and I'm very proud of it. This time I've decided to talk about KINSET once again, the first network for outcome-based professional development. That's what I think it was. And consider its past, its present, and its future. This is not very usual for me to quote nation leaders, but this time I will. Because a year ago, the National Council in Education has decided in December to consider improvement of the system of professional development of teachers. And I think they've made several very important points that really determine where teacher education should go. Well, not surprisingly, one of the decisions was to create modern programs of pre-service and in-service training of teachers. Even more importantly, they talked about the importance to provide stimuli for professional development of teachers. Currently, teachers are not that enthusiastic about what they are being offered. To improve the system of evaluating the qualification and quality of teachers' work, another very important thing. And most importantly of all, I would say, to delegate the evaluation to the professional community of teachers and to find ways to take the opinion of school graduates into account. Now, let's look back. KINSET in 1995-96 has only started in Krasnoyarsk. In 10 years afterwards, this was a network of 15 centers all over Russia, and not just in service training centers. There were quite a few initiatives that KINSET either supported or directly initiated, which also influenced the development of English language teaching in the country. But if I compare what KINSET has done to the decisions of the National Council, I would say that KINSET did establish a broad network of centers for in-service and also pre-service training of teachers. Pre-service training was Tula initiative. Nevertheless, one of the first extensions of Tula network was in Krasnoyarsk. And then there were several centers in Krasnoyarsk and several centers around it. It has increased motivation for taking in-service training. And teachers in Krasnoyarsk, I do remember, have been competing for the opportunity to participate in this training. And not just in Krasnoyarsk. Probably Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk example was also significant in that respect. At that time, Sakhalin people have been migrating to the mainland a lot, and as we were training new teachers, they were leaving, and we needed yet another cohort of teachers, and on and on and on. Nevertheless, the competition was there throughout. Now, a community-based system of attestation was designed and implemented in Krasnoyarsk, and for what I know, it did function quite effectively for some time. Now, finally, the first set of associations of field teachers initiated by the community, teaching community, rather than by universities, again was started within KINSET framework. And there were quite a few associations such as KELTA, Omelta, Velta, you name it, a real professional community which was capable of leadership in the field of foreign language teaching. Just to remind you, this was the community that supported the first version of national exam in English, unified exam that was, and I dare say to this day I believe that this was the strongest version of English language exam, which was then alterated by the university community, I believe more to their own benefit rather than to the benefit of those who were taking this exam. A whole package of school textbooks have been produced also with great support of Krasnoyarsk teachers. And all of these initiatives have been really very visible in Russian foreign language teaching. So if KINSET model was properly supported and disseminated, we would have had a much more effective training system, at least for teachers of foreign languages. Unfortunately, this network of KINSET centers began gradually to deteriorate. Why? For several reasons. KINSET training programs didn't quite fit the standards of the existing in-service training system. They required certain exercises which had to be delivered not within the premises of institutions, but somewhere where teachers could meet informally and do project work in the evening time. As soon as we started mainstreaming this program, we had to sacrifice quite a bit of important elements of it. And again, then the program was not so much attractive as it used to be in the beginning. Preset was terminated by the decision of the Ministry of Education for formal reasons, because it was considered that pedagogical colleges are not qualified enough to train foreign language teachers. This was, from my perspective, a big mistake, because as soon as they have done it, we have discovered that we have a shortage of English language teachers, because university graduates do not always go to schools to teach, while graduates of pedagogical colleges always did. And the program that has been created to support them was providing for a high quality training. The system of English language teachers attestation has remained a unique precedent even in Krasnoyarsk, because the teachers of other disciplines didn't have a similar system. And being so unique, it was also very vulnerable and gradually disappeared. But the associations have survived in several cities of the network and do continue their activities. The network still exists, and very many members have made important leadership careers. So the main outcome of KINSET is the network and professional community of teachers, which is still there. Now, so many years have passed. What did happen to the state system in the meantime? Having done a research here in Ленская University, which is called TALIS. This is a big international research, and we are, of course, responsible only for the Russian part of it. I could say that if we analyze what teachers have told us regarding their attitudes to the existing system, that A, this system is not very much needed by regional authorities. Why? Because they pay teacher trainers a lot less than field teachers, who will then go into training mostly unsuccessful teachers who do not see themselves as making a successful career in schools. Secondly, having paid for teachers' education within the system, regional authorities very often ask them to do all kinds of assignments during their training, which means they hardly believe in the positive outcomes of it, and they never ask about those outcomes. So the system exists and no one is interested in what it actually delivers. Head teachers, they also are very reluctant to send teachers to in-service training because they need them at school. We don't have a replacement system. It's always difficult to find a replacement. Therefore, they won't send a teacher for in-service training until they absolutely must do it according to the legislation. Again, they would find all sorts of reasons why they need the teacher to do all kinds of other things which would intervene with his training. And again, they will never be interested in the outcomes of this education. Teachers that prefer the least time-consuming formats of training. So if they have a choice, they will choose training by distance that requires the least time from them and the least accountability. They seldom can formulate clearly what it is that they want to learn and why. They often believe that in-service training is their duty rather than an opportunity for growth. It seems that Russian education system does not promote pedagogical leadership and does not train pedagogical leaders. Therefore, it's not needed by anyone. Several slides that will follow describe what's happening with teachers' attitudes and beliefs as regards to their involvement in service training system. Our teachers, it looks like, if you see the black dots above the red bars, it shows you that teachers are mostly interested in methodology and content of their disciplinary courses. They have selected these items amongst a range of others a lot more often than their colleagues from other European countries. Where they didn't score so well and did not select particular in-service training dimensions, these are all areas that relate to relationship with children, such as almost nobody, less than 20%, have selected the course that teaches explains how to teach in a multicultural setting. In our country, where we have so many different nations, nationalities, and so on and so forth, we still don't want to know how to address this multicultural audience. The same applies to children with special needs. They are less interested in that. Why is it that they choose what they choose? There is another diagram explaining it. If you look at it, you will see almost the same profile, but this is what is being assessed by the authorities. The authorities assess teachers for how well they know their discipline, for how well they know the methodology of teaching their discipline, and they don't assess them for how well they interact with students, particularly those with special needs. So that's why teachers don't want to learn it. The thing that worried me the most after we've done this research was the fact that our teachers even don't notice children with problems in their classrooms. 64% of Russian teachers said that they don't have any students in their classroom whose native language is not Russian. Again, we were sampling several ethnic territories, and even there, the responses were very similar. 19% say that they do not have any poor performers in their classroom. 68% say that they don't have any children with special needs. And 37% say they have no socially disadvantaged children. These are alarming figures because they exceed the average in Thales review, twice at least. Now, what are the main trends in the world regarding in-service training, regarding teacher development in general? Number one, academic degrees and professional qualifications require different modes of training. And licensing, therefore, becomes a special procedure. So after a teacher graduates from a university, they also have to take some kind of a qualification exam to make sure that they can perform well as a teacher. We don't have this system, and probably this is something to consider. In order to get a license, a future teacher in many countries must complete an internship course, which lasts from half a year to 2 years in some countries. And after that internship, they take an exam for licensing. Another interesting trend that we have observed, this is a policy of attracting best university graduates into the teaching profession, not just to attract them, but also to ask them to serve in underprivileged schools. I will talk about it at length a bit later. Now, professional qualification standards are teaching career-based. Several levels of qualifications are usually described in those, and they can serve as guidelines for both pre-service training system. Well, they are supposed to train for the minimal level of teacher proficiency, and in-service training system. Once we know what qualifies a teacher as an outstanding one, as advanced teacher, as a master teacher, this is something we can offer as a framework to in-service training system. The other important tendency is that all the resources for in-service training are held in schools. They dispose of these resources, well, in accordance with their needs. We're beginning to do the same thing in some territories of Russia, and I think this is a very positive tendency. Another trend, practice, is considered to be more important than theory. Even pre-service training in some countries, in England for instance, is delivered in schools rather than in universities. From the very first day, the potential teachers are encountered with school realities. They can observe classes, they participate in training as assistant teachers, and so on and so forth. In Japan, by the way, they have begun to do the same thing in Tokyo so far, but this tendency will probably go beyond just the capital city. Other kinds of practices in Japan, they encourage future teachers to observe children in different settings, not just within school. In the street, if they can, in families, in all sorts of institutions created for children's benefit. Again, this gives them a very practical perspective on what child likes, what stimulates a child to learn, and so on. In-service training companies also move from universities to schools, and schools commission their training. Leadership in in-service training at schools is given to teachers. Teachers lead professional development of their colleagues. In order to be able to do so, they are also trained in the National College for Leadership in London or elsewhere, and they then set up groups of teachers who are either disciplinary teachers, or this may be a cross-disciplinary group, or they can lead development projects in a particular school. In-service training in schools prevents standardization of training. Once it's within school, it becomes needs-based. Teachers won't appreciate anything that is of generic nature and which does not address their specific needs directly. Teachers need interaction. If a teacher constantly works at least with one colleague, his students improve their outcomes much more fastly. This is what research says. So all of these things have to be taken into account when we think about reforming our teacher training. I would mention one particular initiative that I think is a source of inspiration for people who want to develop professionally. The initiative is called Teach for Russia. It started in spring 2015. Similar programs exist in 37 countries, and the first one was Teach for America. This is an attempt to invite non-professional teachers into teaching in schools, also underprivileged schools, often rural schools or schools with a lot of migrant children, a lot of children with disabilities, and so on and so forth. The first cohort of teachers was not very big, but currently it's almost 150 teachers that are working within the network. These are graduates of best universities, chosen through a three-stage competition, and they must work for 2 years at least, getting small add-ons to their salaries, but they may choose to stay beyond these 2 years term, but will no longer be subsidized in any way in that case. Before they start teaching, because they are not professional teachers, they are going through a system of induction. There is a summer school which offers them induction and training. Trainers are invited by the organizers. Then they have webinars of different kinds. They may have individual coaching through their first year, and they get mentors from education, from business, from social sector, from different kinds of infrastructure. They are offered training sessions, but the attendance is voluntary. They may choose to go or not to go. And then they can meet with experts and trainers when they want, once a month usually. Beside this official training system that is being offered to them, they have created their own virtual system of in-service training, which is all entirely social network based. They have a small community on Facebook, and this is where they train each other more or less. I've listed several examples of what they do in order to develop themselves as professionals. First, they share information about training opportunities that exist within the network and outside the network. On the slide you will see some utterances of these participants that would describe how it happens. Another activity that happens very often, they invite each other into projects that they themselves have started. Now, a girl is advertising Tech Kids, a project that emphasizes the strategies for teaching children through their encounter with old objects such as coal, iron, and they have to decide why it was that such an object was used in household, or tea kettle that you cannot plug in. Also, one of the most widespread things, and probably the most useful ones, is when teachers are sharing their concerns and they want to have feedback on their behavior. Like a girl was, for instance, sharing a story how a child entered her classroom and he was wearing a hat. He was late for the class, so she said, "Well, why are you late? Take your hat off." And he said he wouldn't take his hat off. She then said, "Well, go out," as a teacher would have done in almost any classroom. Then she approaches him after the lesson, and the child takes off his hat and shows that he has burned his eyebrows. So that's why he was wearing a hat. And she's saying, "What a poor teacher I am. I didn't realize that something has happened. And I scolded the boy, and I should have been actually supportive," and so on and so forth. So she asks her colleagues to give her advice on her behavior, and they give all sorts of different advices. She can choose the one that suits her best. Well, they share good practice and good experience. What I loved was a story about a teacher of literature who was thinking about ways how she could make children to read the famous Moo story. So she decided to ask them to write letters to Gerasim, advising him on his behavior. And children were writing all sorts of lessons. For instance, "Why did you drown it, Gerasim? Why did you not just leave your landlord together with your dog? Next time, buy a dog that can swim well." It's not a recipe. But all the children have read the story, by all means, so she has accomplished what she wanted to accomplish. And they share such good strategies, and they may borrow strategies from each other freely. Now, they also can commission new training and expert support. For instance, a girl is saying, "Those of you who want to know more about emotional intelligence, please let me know about it, and we will commission an expert to talk to you about it." There are some cases, rare cases, when they need to raise awareness. Like one trainer was sensitizing the network to the fact that children's suicides are being advertised in social networks, and has given examples of how it happened. And his advice was to talk to parents more often about it so that they are aware of it. Now, why is this a story worth telling? It looks like a new system of professional development is emerging, which is really needs-based, which is very adjustable to the context in which a teacher is working, and it's significantly less expensive than the traditional system. Now, what's there for KINSET? KINSET has a network. It has a lot of competent trainers who could provide expert support, straight away. It's knowledgeable about project work and could influence other networks, such as Young Teachers of Krasnoyarsk and even Teach for Russia network. There is a need there in English language competent advisors. It's a fiscal agent, KINSET, so it can apply for a small support to bonus the most active experts and to capture outcomes of inline training and support. It can reach the colleagues from remote KINSET locations and bring them back into the community. And this is an opportunity, from my point of view, to revive the KINSET community in the context of new digital era. Good luck with it.